Hi everyone, this is the first instalment of 4 books written by a friend of mine who lives in Geraldine. And as you know, Geraldine is not far from from Timaru, and it's actually the place she's talking about in the story is Maungati, which is very close to where Nana and Granddad used to live. This is called Magnus and the Maungati Mouse, and he says, I'd better get ready, my story is about to begin. So here's Magnus. Magnus was big, he was bold, he was strong, held his nose in the air as he strutted along, a ring through one nostril, a chain at his chest. He'd fought and he'd beaten the bravest and best. With battle-scarred ears, he was slick, he was cool, he wouldn't be taken for anyone's fool. He was proud of his conquest, his fame and renown as the #1 terror of Maungati town. There's the first page. Now in Maungati fields lived a little brown mouse, and in winter he moved to a Maungati house. With his uncles and sisters, 7 kids and a wife, he wasn't cut out for the hardships of life. This is a pretty cool story. So you'll see the page I'm reading after I've read it. So look at the pictures for the next page. He picked his home carefully, by sound and by smell, not horribly noisy nor vacuumed too well. A good choice of nibbles, cheese, chocolate and crumbs, the fragrance of baking and stewing of plums. Ask your mums and dads about the stewing of plums and the baking in our house when they were little. He chose his home wisely, the family moved in. It was like having holidays, the treasures within. With cake on their whiskers they felt smug and fat. There was only one drawback, a very large cat. Whoa. There's Magnus. Maybe you could draw him. I did once. It's pretty cool to draw. Magnus woke up sensing something was wrong. He sniffed and he stiffened. The smell was quite strong, and scratching and scrabbling beneath the fridge door brought a glint to his eye while he sharpened a claw. He's getting ready to eat some mice, as you've seen. Maungati Mouse poked his head from the crack and eyeballed a monster with stripes up his back. His little ears quivered, his nose gave a tweak, then he shot out from safety past 4 furry feet. Magnus was waiting. But what a surprise! The creature had vanished in front of his eyes. He leapt to his feet and lashed out with his paw, but the mouse was already behind the back door. Magnus the brave stuck his nose in the ear and sniffing jumped into a comfortable chair. Mice were beneath him. He hadn't the time. He was saving himself for a more worthy crime. These creatures were tiny, the size of his paw, a minuscule mouthful he'd have to eat raw. They tasted so nasty, so grisly and gross. He was thankful the mouse hadn't come too close. Oh, do you think he's really telling the truth? Maungati Mouse got more daring each day, ever running up Magnus's chair for a play. Magnus was furious, he couldn't sit by, so he challenged the mouse to do battle or die. But the hour would be midnight, the moon would be bright, they would fight on the carpet and go on all night. If the mouse was defeated, his family and spouse would shift at the double from Magnus's house. Here's a challenge. Now I might show you the picture before I read it, because it's all going to be back to front if you try to read it. So let's have a look here. Maungati Mouse held his head in deep thought. There had to be ways to avoid being caught. Just then in the corner his rod and his reel suggested a plan that began to appeal. Midnight was striking, the mice all stood by. There were quivering noises, some started to cry, and sick with emotion, some sank to the floor as Magnus and Maungati came face to paw. Ooh, who do you think might win? Here's the picture for the next one. Magnus stretched out with his chin on the mat. He ought to be fair to the minuscule rat. To give him a chance to be seen at his best, allow the poor creature one final request. Aha, wonder what that's going to be. One last wish I grant you, he said to the mouse, and then I will kill you, you verminous louse. So what's it to be, you despicable brat? Who's dared to annoy this invincible rat? Do you think the mouse will win, or do you think Magnus will win? If you've heard the story, don't tell your siblings. Maungati raised his brows in surprise. My request, Mr. Puss, is that you shut your eyes, that you count up to 5 with your nose on the mat. I will grant you your wish, said the arrogant cat. Quick as a whisker, the mouse on tiptoes threw his hook at the circle on Magnus's nose. It caught there and held, and the mouse ran the line round the chair leg and table. He hadn't much time. There he goes. Look at that. He's pretty speedy. What's going to happen? 5, said the cat, and he opened his eyes. He lifted his head and then screamed blood-curdling cries. Meow! His nostril was ripping, and he was held fast like a fish who'd been caught on the very last cast. The mouse were ecstatic. Some leapt in the air, and some did naughty things over Magnus's chair. Some tweaked at his whiskers, some tugged at his tail, and sang the defeat of this horrible male. There he goes. There's the mouse family celebrating. He doesn't look happy, Magnus, does he? But Maungati Mouse shouted, No, this is wrong. I will not have you taunting the one that was strong. Go back to your bedrooms and go back to sleep. Just leave me alone. I have a vigil to keep. You can find out what a vigil is. The clock struck 12:30. The mice slunk away, and Maungati said, Looks like we've come to stay. Now tell me, great furry one, can we be sure? Will you solemnly promise to hound us no more? Oh, do you think Magnus can be trusted? I don't know. Magnus the Bold wasn't brave now, just sore. He was fainting with fear as blood dripped on his paw. I will promise you anything. Just set me free. You have my permission to live here with me. So the mouse bit the line that was tied round the chair, and he unhooked the barb that had been Magnus's snare. But was the cat grateful? No, mad at his loss, he pounced on the mouse just to show who was boss. Uh-oh, he didn't keep his word. That's not good. He left the mouse dying and crawled into bed, feeling old and defeated, his legs heavy as lead. He'd never before lost one single fight. He'd never lived through such a terrible night. As Magnus was snoring, his nose still quite sore, Maungati's wife poked her head round the door. Her husband was missing. She squeaked with alarm when she saw that he'd come to some terrible harm. Poor Maungati. Wonder what's happened. She stood there beside him and wept a great tear for the bravest and best mouse, the one held so dear. She murmured a prayer and she sighed a deep sigh, that for her and her relatives he had had to die. Oh, poor Maungati. She sighed a deep sigh, and she prayed a long prayer, committing his spirit and soul to God's care. But God wasn't ready. He hadn't a place. And the start of a smile showed on Maungati's face. Not time yet, Maungati. Though battered quite senseless, his life on the line, though wounded and bruised, he would heal given time. He got up rejoicing, for battle was done, and she kissed him with pride for the glory he had won. Oh, look, he's all good. So the mice stayed that winter and grew rather fat, but they still kept a lookout for Magnus the cat, till summer burned hot. Then they all moved away to their holiday quarters near Caroline Bay. Oh, some of you have been to Caroline Bay. And when you come over from Canada, you'll be able to go to Caroline Bay. Very cool. Now there in the sand dunes, who's biding his time? Who's prowling and planning some nasty mean crime? But show him a fish hook, he yowls in fright and vanishes into the depth of the night. Yow! And Maungati says that's all for now. Now these books are written by, I will tell you who they are, Jan Hill, and that's partly a true story because she's had a big cat, not with a ring in his nose, but she had a big cat, and the mouse was under the fridge and the cat was watching it, and the mouse raced out and the cat missed it. So she was inspired to write this story. So thank you, Jan Hill. And it's also illustrated by Richard Gunther, who is from Timaru. Actually, he lives in Periora. So you could get a map and find out where all these places are. Caroline Bay, Maungati, and Geraldine, and Periora. Okay, bye for now. I have got 3 more stories in that series, so I'll read you the next one tomorrow. Love you. Bye.